Hare Krishna, Gauranga. So we're now on to the 15th video, halfway through the 30 key verses. I thought I was going really fast with these, but it seems like it's taking a lot longer than I would have imagined. But we want to take our time with this, do it nicely. Srila Prabhupada always wanted the devotees to become expert in everything they do, whether it's preaching, whether it's book distribution, whether it's our family life, whatever service, we should try to do it nicely, do it expertly. We are now up to 7.14, so still in knowledge of the Absolute, chapter 7, and again another really wonderful verse. And you may see actually some of these verses are starting to overlap now, and some of the points that Prabhupada makes in the purport are starting to merge together, so we can see that the Bhagavad-Gita is all progressing nicely towards us understanding Krishna more. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Daiva Hyesha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratyaya Mame Vaye Prapadyante Mayam Etam Tarantite. This divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Name Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nirvishesha Sunyavari Pashachati Sitani Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham Kroti Vachalam Pangum Langai Tigrim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Nama Shreshtam Manamapi Sachiputra Atraswarupam Rupam Tashagrajam Urupane Maturim Gostavatim Radha Kundam Girivaram Mahoradika Madhavasham Prakto Yasha Pratita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tamnitoshmi. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has innumerable energies, and all these energies are divine. Although the living entities are part of his energies and are therefore divine, due to contact with material energy, the original superior power is covered. So we've been hearing a lot about this point, that we are eternal, and we do have a spiritual nature as part and parcel of Krishna, but we are lesser, we are marginal, because we can choose to go up or down. We have that free will. And at this particular point in time, we happen to be down. We happen to be floating around a little bit in our material nature. We are quite conditioned, speaking for myself. And we are now struggling, in one sense, to climb back up the hill to reach Krishna, who in many ways makes it easy. He's laid out this path of Krishna consciousness to us. But nonetheless, there's a lot of work to be done. Being thus covered by material energy, one cannot possibly overcome its influence. As previously stated, both the material and spiritual natures, being emanations from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are eternal. The living entities belong to the eternal superior nature of the Lord, but due to contamination by the inferior nature, matter, their illusion is also eternal. So there's a point that comes, Prabhupada calls this, now the conditioned soul is therefore called Nityabada, or eternally conditioned. So Nityabada means essentially that we've been here so long that we've actually forgotten. Time has clouded us over. And we'll later hear in 15:15 Bhagavad-Gita that Krishna says that he is either knowledge or forgetfulness, for the devotees or for the conditioned souls. So if we want to be forgetful, he can put us happily into that condition where we just completely have forgotten who we are. If we want to be atheist, he can provide all kinds of powerful knowledge and arguments for us to be atheist. And if we want to be Krishna conscious, he can also just completely open the doors. The full fruits of devotional service are there, if you want it. So there's Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sadhu Kabunaya, Sudachiti Shabanadi Koryo Adaya. That is saying that there's eternally liberated souls who have come from the spiritual world and who are always aware of their eternal nature. And then there's Nityabada, the exact opposite. Those who are just completely lost and are here, as we had in the previous verse, almost trying to relish the material world, trying to turn the toilet into a nice place, right? We hear that example from Bhaktivedanta Saraswati, that we go into the bathroom to pass waste, and then we try to decorate it and make it a nice place to stay there. It's not how it works, The material world is not meant for us to reside here. It's just a place where we get purified and we can then perform Sankirtan Yagya and then get ready for Krishna's pastimes, and then boom, back into the spiritual world, That's what we want to do. That's where we're supposed to be. No one can trace out the history of his becoming conditioned at a certain date in material history. So it wasn't that we got conditioned 5,000 years ago or 1 million years ago, so on and so forth. It literally has been millions of births. And even if it hasn't been millions of births, either way we are conditioned now, so we got to start doing the work. We got to concentrate on the bigger picture, which is getting out of the material world and following this Krishna consciousness process, studying, deeply, intensely, to untangle ourselves. Wonder how working that part out isn't important. Consequently, his release from the clutches of material nature is very difficult, even though that material nature is an inferior energy, because material energy is ultimately conducted by the Supreme Will, which the living entity cannot overcome. So both are Krishna's energy, and both are working under his direction, but only when we take shelter of the spiritual energy, then will Krishna release that potency of the material energy over us. That's when it eases off, when you become Krishna conscious. Inferior material nature is defined herein as divine nature due to its divine connection and movement by the divine will. Being conducted by divine will, material nature, although inferior, acts so wonderfully in the construction and destruction of the cosmic manifestation. So this is kind of again this point that the Supreme Person of Godhead is not sweating it out up there in the heavens, up in the spiritual world. He's not, working his brain like anything to keep everything afloat, to keep all the universes moving, being created, being destroyed, being maintained. No, the Supreme Person of Godhead has got his, he's got his workers for that. He's got the demigods to manage these things. He's got his Vishnu incarnations to manage these things. He is simply enjoying with his devotees. That's Krishna, one of Krishna's special qualities, which sets him as the original Supreme Person of Godhead above all others. So that is that he has these amazing pastimes, and he has his wonderful devotees. He has his beautiful form, and he has his flute. Those four things that no other form has. Very special point. Vishnu, he's maintaining the universe. Brahma is getting empowered to create it, and Lord Shiva is being empowered to destroy it. They're doing all the hard work in that sense. And even then, it's not actually that they're constantly working on these things. The potency they have is able to just keep these things going. That's true intelligence, is being able to work properly and delegate and manage properly. The Vedas confirms this as follows: Mayam tu prakritam vidyan, Mayanam tu maheshwaram. Although Maya, illusion, is false or temporary, the background of Maya is the supreme magician, the personality of Godhead, who is Maheshwara, the supreme controller. And that was a quote from the Svetashvara Upanishad 4.10. Another meaning of guna is rope. It is to be understood that the conditioned soul is tightly tied by the ropes of illusion. A man bound by the hands and feet cannot free himself. He must be helped by a person who is unbound. So this is this idea of we can't have the blind leading the blind being our philosophy. We have to become free from material nature by practicing Krishna consciousness, taking shelter of that bona fide spiritual master who has also surpassed the material nature and is fully a pure devotee of the Lord, and he can cut that rope. It's quite nice actually as well to hear this being bound up, because right now we're in Kartik and we'll be reading and hearing and singing the Damodarastikam, this pastime of the Lord being bound up. No one can bind the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but Mother Yashoda was able to bind the Lord by being a pure devotee. So we can become unbound by singing these wonderful pastimes and practicing in this Kartik month and getting triple, double the mercy, getting thousands of times the mercy for our actions. Krishna conscious action, should I say. Because the bound cannot help the bound, the rescuer must be liberated. Therefore, only Lord Krishna, or his bona fide representative, the spiritual master, can release the conditioned soul. So there's that point, the spiritual master. Without such superior help, one cannot be freed from the bondage of material nature. devotional service or Krishna consciousness can help one gain such release. Krishna, being the Lord of the illusory energy, can order this insurmountable energy to release the conditioned soul. So Prabhupada's also made that point there, that Krishna will ease off this suffering of the material energy because we have made that step to him. He wants us to come back more than we want to go to him. This is a point we must understand. We must really take that to heart. When we're feeling that we just cannot take it, we just cannot go any further in this material world, even in these spiritual endeavours, how blissful, how wonderful kirtan, how nice is prasadam, how sweet is devotional service or devotee association, but still sometimes we can't take it. That's how hard it can be. Being honest, sometimes it can be like that for devotees, for anybody, because we're in this material world, we're still here, and as long as we're still here, there's a risk until one has achieved pure Krishna prema. There is still a risk, and this material world can have some effect. But Krishna he'll be easing it off to that degree that you surrender. He rewards you accordingly. Devotional service of Krishna consciousness can help one gain such release. And this is Krishna being he orders this release out of his causeless mercy on the surrendered soul, and out of his paternal affection for the living entity, who is originally a beloved son of the Lord. So, Krishna is he's equal to everyone, but of course he's favourably disposed towards his devotees. This is a point that's discussed in the Bhagavad-Gita, in the 7th canto. Even before we get into the Prahlad Maharaj story, that first chapter is there. Krishna is equal to everyone. And that question is being asked, well, why is it that he favours the devotees so much? He doesn't favour, but if you have a son who, if you're in a care home, say, or something, or you're sick and you have 2 or 3 sons or daughters, and only one of them comes all the time to help you, naturally, you're going to want to be more nice with him. It's just that's the way it is, and it's common sense. It's reciprocation. If they have no reciprocation, they're still your sons or daughters, but you will show more affection. So Krishna's like that. His devotees are the people who will spend eternity with him, serving with him, in a loving relationship with him. Whereas the conditioned souls, they may or may not give God the nod sometimes, or they may give some thanks or some whatever it is, or they may even, their only reaction to God may be some dislike, But still, nonetheless, he will favour them by giving them the usages of the material energy to some extent or another, but he won't be as favourably disposed towards them to the point of pulling them out of their condition. Therefore, surrendering to the lowest fear of the Lord is the only means to get free from the clutches of their stringent material nature. The words mam, eva, are also significant. Mam means unto Krishna or Vishnu only, and not Brahma or Shiva. So the benefits are not coming from the demigods. The eternal liberated condition doesn't come from the demigods. The demigods can't give what they don't have. They're also conditioned souls. They're also in the material world taking birth and death. They're just positions ultimately. They're very advanced. They have powers and abilities and lifespans far longer than ours, but still nonetheless they are also hoping one day to take to pure devotional service. Although Brahma and Shiva are greatly elevated and are almost on the level of Vishnu, so there's that point there, it is not possible for such incarnations of Rajaguna passion and Tamaguna ignorance to release the conditioned soul from the clutches of Maya. In other words, both Brahma and Shiva are also under the influence of Maya. And we've heard about different examples in the Srimad Bhagavatam where Brahma showed some really, really gross material nature in some examples, even to the point where he thought that he could bewilder Krishna. The Brahma Vimohan Leela, he took all the calves and cows in the middle of Krishna's pastimes. Such a risk to try and insult and offend the Lord and his pure devotees, Indra, we see as a great demigod. He makes so many mistakes like that. And even Lord Shiva, and he's considered the greatest of Vaishnavas. He also gets bewildered by Mohini Murti and so many different things. There's a few pastimes where he shows that he ultimately has to concede to the Supreme Person of Godhead. He fights the Lord with his Shiva Dwara, and the Lord fights him with his Narayan Dwara, and they have a battle, and different situations like that. Only Vishnu is the master of Maya, therefore he alone can give release to the conditioned soul. The Vedas, Shvetashvatara Upanishad 3.8, confirm this in the phrase Tam Eva Viditva, or freedom is possible only by understanding Krishna. Even Lord Shiva affirms that liberation can be achieved only by the mercy of Vishnu. Lord Shiva says, Mukti pradata sarvisham Vishnu evana samsayaha. There is no doubt that Vishnu is the deliverer of liberation for everyone. And I think maybe in a few classes back I quoted this verse, Tat tenu kampam susamikshimano, bunjana evatmakritam vipakam, hridvagva purbhyaviradhan namaste, jiveta yumukti padesa die back. That simply tolerate all these different difficulties and hang on in devotional service, and you will attain that liberation. Liberation meaning that we'll be able to go back to Godhead in this lifetime and attain, eternal relationship with Krishna. And then again, to quote same things I said in that class that I quoted, that verse, Srila Bhaktivinoda Saraswati says, just simply stay alive in devotional service. And that is our right, that is our gift of hanging in there, And when we say hanging in there, it may seem like that sometimes. A devotee doesn't realise how fast they're going until you stop the car and, then you see how far you've come. This is one thing to understand. If you're driving a car, you're kind of sitting there, you don't realise that you're doing 90 miles an hour or 100, if you were doing 100 miles an hour, don't do 100 miles an hour, of course. But if you were doing that speed, 100 miles an hour in the car, you wouldn't realise it because you're just going so quick. But if you stick your hand out the window, or if you watch the lamp posts and or the other cars, or you see people going by, you're going by so fast, So, and then when you realise that you've went actually 100 miles in that hour, and then you've crossed the country or whatever it is, then you realise, well, I've really advanced. So sometimes devotees think that there's no benefits coming from their chanting, or from the reading, or from all the efforts of getting up in the morning and taking bath at this time and chanting mantras at that time and doing this, doing that. They think sometimes it's not worth it, but it is. It's all accrued into a super safe bank account. They say sometimes that when people are trying to move illegal money, they move it into all these Swiss bank accounts and all this kind of thing, and because they won't extradite it and they won't reveal their secrets to anyone. But the most ultimate and safe bank account is your Krishna conscious bank account. Your Bhakti points or your Shakti points or whatever you want to call them, all those tokens of devotional service are stored in a bank account that cannot be broken by anyone. You may get frozen sometimes. If you make Vaishnava Aparad, your devotional service may get smashed a little bit, but ultimately speaking, you never lose what you've gained. So we can take heart in that point, that even if we feel that we're eternally conditioned, and that no matter what devotional service we're trying to do, we're just not getting anywhere. We're actually flying, we're rocketing back towards Krishna. But let's try to rocket with some style, So even if we're flying, practice harder. If we're not flying, definitely practice harder. And if we're just somewhere in between, just keep practicing Krishna consciousness. That's the point of everything, The spiritual nature is ours for the taking because Krishna wants to give it to us. He's lifted the cover for us that are reading these books, for us that have, or for anybody that now comes to hear this class. If you're not a devotee already, the door's open. Jump in and join us in the fun. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi, Hari Hari Gaura.